You stupid bitch. Yeah, you're a stupid bitch. You stupid bitch. Welcome to this week's episode of Stupid Bitches Say What? The Aussie podcast about everything and nothing, but always generally with an alcoholic beverage to keep you entertained. But this week, I am again pursuing my dry July status.
Boo!
Sky was meant to be supporting. Well, not really supporting. Sky said she was going to not drink as well, but she is. She lied. She lied. But we assure you'll still be entertained, please. Because as it is always the case, it is with us, your hosts, Skyly Collett and Sean Hipkins.
And Skazi don't not drink.
Not drink.
This week, it's pop culture, and we're getting our book smarts on as we host our first ever book club. Well, sort of.
Yeah.
Listen in as we each discuss one of our fave authors and a book series they are famous for. I'm covering the great Virginia Andrews, famous for tales of debauchery, shivering,
Incest.
quivering limbs.
Or I should say incense.
While Sean talks about Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City novels, a series of 9 books so far, spanning from 1978 to 2014. Each book is relevant to the time it's released and centers on a circle of San Francisco friends and their many adventures as they work their way through the struggles of young adulthood, parenting, and many fun side adventures. Oh, it's tough being an adult.
Isn't it?
What are you drinking, Sean Bino Hipkins, please?
Well, tonight I'm drinking Minchinberry. 0% alcohol, Sauvignon Blanc. Contains no more than 0.5% alcohol.
Is it gently removed?
It doesn't. It says has had the alcohol gently removed.
Aw, gently. It's so sweet.
Isn't it? Just come here, you little thing. And remains full of flavour, light tropical fruit and citrus aromas, followed by fresh, light, and zingy palate.
Does it though? Does it?
Look, it doesn't taste like, bless you, kitty cat. It doesn't taste like a savvy bee. They're fucking dreaming if they think it's the same sweet taste. It tastes like a bit of off fruit juice. But hey, it symbolizes something and I'm going with it.
I threw out all those non-alcoholic drinks I had from a couple of weeks ago.
Threw
them out. I was like, I'm not even going to fucking... Because then I thought about it. Because sometimes, you know, when you have that last little bit of wine in the bottle and you just keep it in the fridge for cooking?
Yeah.
No, I don't mix it in. What you mix it into? Another bottle of wine?
No, I thought you meant you were going to mix the non-alcoholic one into it. Soften it up a bit.
Disgusting. I meant leave it for cooking, but this one I was like, what the fuck? Can I even use it for cooking? No, bin. It deserves to be in the bin.
Get out of my house. Be gone. And what, pray tell, are you drinking, you stupid fucking bitch, Sky?
Well, I'm glad that you asked because you've been ragging on me so hard for drinking alcohol during your dry July. I'm going to share something with you. I'm drinking something called Naturio.
Oh,
It's a 0.4 plus.
that's one of these.
It's a Grenache Shiraz 2020. Let's see if it's de-alcoholized red wine. Natura is the fruit of much research. I'm not even going to read the rest of it.
So you actually are going dry this episode.
I'm also drinking beers.
Uh.
Then the alcohol is carefully removed, thus preserving its full aroma and flavour. A perfect match with pasta dishes and roasts, plus.
Oh.
The reason
Well, you might
I
be able
got
to keep
this,
that one for cooking. I love how they don't pair it with anything. They just say, just chuck it in a roast.
No, it's a perfect match with pasta dishes and roasts.
Okay, so it is paired.
But the reason I got this is because I was at the old Golden Circle during this week. And it was $1.
Shut up. Well, that's one thing I do have to complain about, actually, is the non-alcoholic wine. Oh, here
I
we go.
haven't even
Hang on, let's
taken
have
a
a sip.
taste. I've just had a sip. Oh, it tastes like death and
Go, you
dying.
gotta
And
do
it
it.
smells like death and dying. Oh my
Like a
God.
boot.
I'm gonna hate myself for this.
You got to turn your camera on for this, folks. Still hasn't even gone past the lips.
Okay, hang on.
He's gonna go. She's gonna throw.
Tastes like a sweet perfume.
Oh, isn't that a song lyric? Sweet perfume. The smell of your sweet perfume. Oh, she's still gagging. Quick, chase it back with some beer.
That's fucked.
That's what you get for dollar wine, whether it's got alcohol or not.
Oh, that's $1 straight in the bin. I'll never see again.
Don't be wasteful, please. Put it in your pastas.
Fuck no. It's got no alcohol. It doesn't have that kick that's supposed to give it. You
Oh,
put
yeah.
the wine in your food to give it a little bit of kick.
A bit of a bite. But that's one thing I'm really pissed off about is we were talking about in the previous episode, the whole Zoomer subculture of alcohol-free shit. So they've also jacked up the price of non-alcoholic fucking wines and beers now. So
Well,
I'm
this is
still
a buck.
paying. Well, except for
They're
your
having
Golden
great
Circle
success
special.
with it.
This one was $11 bottle. But you know, you can get $11 wine normally. That's quite okay-ish. And I've also seen even Heineken Zero now, a 6-pack in the supermarket in the bottle is $15.
Well,
should be a fucking tenner.
My cousin, when she was pregnant at her engagement party, she paid over $100 for a non-alcoholic bottle of wine. And I said, bitch, please, you just better off not drinking.
What the fuck? Yeah, you're not even gonna feel.
She's like, try it. I was like, no. I'd rather not.
Just slapping it out on a hand, it just breaks.
Chuck it in the bin.
Yeah,
$100 in the bin.
$100.
Yeah.
God, I'd be fucking, unless it's a good bottle of bubbles, I'd be hard pressed paying $100 for a bottle of wine normally with alcohol.
I'm actually looking at it sitting in one of my favorite wine glasses, and I feel like I need to apologize to my wine glass and be like, I'm sorry. I should never have poured that into you, you poor bugger.
The glass is just melting. It just shatters. We'll get through this.
Sorry to do this to you.
We'll get through this.
You poor glass.
Oh, bless.
So, how's your week been, stupid bitch?
Week's been good. I've got a bit of a TV miniseries I want to quickly talk about that I watched.
Of course, please.
It's not a nice one, as in the topic's not nice, but it's Jared from Subway. Do you remember that guy?
I saw him come up on Binge as like a true crime documentary, and I was like, I know that he was doing something dodgy. Is he a pedo? Is that what it is?
He is, yeah. So the scandal was he was a pedophile. And it's a 3-part special on Investigation Discovery and Binge. And I watched it. And I didn't realize how huge a star he actually was in the US over his time. As you're getting it out of your sight, aren't you? That glass of wine.
The smell of it is just like, that's what you get when you pay $1 for non-alcoholic wine.
Just buy a can of Coke. But yeah, it's a 3-part special. I didn't realize how loved he was in the US. So I remember when Jared from Subway, hey, I ate a Subway every day for so much and I lost so much weight.
Blah, blah, blah.
That was big in Australia for about maybe a year, I would say. And it wasn't really even big. It was just sort of some marketing ploy thing. But in America, he had a very successful and very fucking lucrative career.
I feel like it was a bit bigger than a year. I feel like he was on the Subway ads for a long time.
He would have been on the ads, but he never really became an icon over here. People knew who he was. It was Jared from Subway. Yeah, he lost weight, blah, blah, blah. But in America, he'd have famous athletes and stars that loved him, he would do photo shoots with, they'd endorse him, they'd do all these specials. He was a millionaire from it. He constantly was going around the country doing presentations at schools. He was major. And you learn that in this thing, how just big he was. There was all these other Subway family members, bigger people that were doing the Subway challenge and joining his crusade and shit. He was sort of big in he was sort of big in Oz at the beginning, but never really, he was massive. It would just surprise me how big he was. So the scandal that broke out and how intricate it was there was a woman in his life who had taped all of his conversations that she was having with him and went to the FBI and was trying to fucking expose him. Basically, she was sending messages to Subway, nothing was happening, all this stuff, and he just kept getting away with what the shit he was doing. So when I remember him being busted, when he got busted and it's sort of happening, but I thought it was a kind of at the same level as Mark Sailing from Glee, like he had a computer that had pornographic images in it. It's actually much worse. So he was working in cahoots with this other guy who was doing the same thing, got done for the same thing at the same time. Can't remember what their working relationship was, but he was taking trips to Asian countries and really getting involved in it. And he was telling this woman the stuff he was doing.
So bad.
It's hard watching or listening to some of it as the tapes, as he becomes, he's very descriptive, and he's a proper fiend. It's fucking, if you can stomach it, I would say watch it. It's a lot worse. He's an absolute monster. It's not too graphic or anything, but it's just very confronting. And it's just interesting learning how he got caught in the end, and what this woman had to go through to get him to be caught, and how she had to do secret drop-offs with the FBI of these tapes after she'd record them, and it kind of broke up her family because she was doing it all the time, and the kids weren't able to sort of have their mother, basically, because she was always constantly talking to him. Would have been such a mind fuck trying to have to play along with it as well and pretend that you were interested in it just to get him caught.
But can you be persecuted? Did he do it in the States, or was he just doing it in Asian countries? Like, because they don't have the same laws, right? Because, they tend to.
Well, he was doing it. He was doing it in Asian countries where he was able to freely do it. Basically, he was like, you can get whatever you want over there, and blah blah blah.
Oh, it makes me so fucking sad.
Yeah, and then he was doing it definitely in America as well. So there was people coming forward saying this is what had happened. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a documentary called Finding Neverland. I can't remember if I spoke about this on the podcast before.
Oh yeah, this is the Michael Jackson
one.
Yeah,
which is
one
also,
of the guys was Aussie. He was the main one.
Yes,
wasn't
he? Yeah. And I remember him as a kid when he was doing all that, and he's now a dance choreographer. Very
a guy
successful.
I went to school with knew him really well, and was all over Facebook at the time when it came out, saying he remembers parts of things that he talks about. Yeah.
Oh, it's really raw and hard to listen to that as well. But ultimately, it's a fucking reality. You know what I mean? And it's still kind of, it does really annoy me how much people in society just sweep it under the rug with Michael Jackson. I can't listen to any of his songs anymore, and I always switch it over on the radio when he comes on, just because you know what he did and you don't want to support it. And I know he's a musical and entertaining genius, but it just really bugs me that so many people still idolize him.
Yeah.
After what I think is legitimate claims against him. And even though it's hard to watch, I just don't think you can kind of turn a blind eye to that reality of it.
And how much the parents were so complacent in the whole thing.
Very complacent, because they were getting given all this money, and they were living such a,
that's hardcore. The real crime, I think, is the parents who allowed it to happen.
Knowing it happened, even though they didn't know for real.
Your kids, mate, you fuckers.
Yeah, it's not worth the fucking first class tickets.
No way, never.
Yeah. So that was mine. If you do want to watch it, it's very interesting seeing it all. It's not from start to finish the gory details. It's just a very interesting case and how they actually get it done.
I'm sorry, I'll pass on that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And how's your week been?
My week's been great. The one thing that I would like to share is that I signed up to something this week. Now you're going to laugh your ass off. So I've been seeing these things. Now, I don't know if you've seen them before. They're the...
Can I have a guess?
Yeah, go.
It's not the Japanese candy boxes?
No. I have gone to get them, but the postage is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I signed up to this thing. It's called Challenger. Actually, let me just tell you what.
Oh yes, I have seen that. You walk Mount Everest, or you walk Kathmandu.
The Conqueror Challenge. The Conqueror Challenge, as it is, right? And so they always post these really cool videos and stuff about like the different walks that you can do. There's like a Lord of the Rings one. Mm-hmm. There's all these massive ones, right? So guess what came up on my Facebook, or it was my Insta, I think it was. So I'm rarely on Facebook anymore. It came up and it was Transylvania Plus.
Oh, cool.
And as soon as I saw it, I thought, fuck it. I've been wanting to do it. I hinted at Tyler before Christmas last year a few times and was hoping that it would be one of my Christmas gifts, but he didn't get that hint. So I just decided, fuck it, I'm gonna pay for it. I'm gonna get it, right? So it's $60, 60 odd
Okay.
bucks, right? 59.99 or some shit like
Is
that.
that just for the Transylvania, or is that like you're
Just
in the
you
club?
pay per challenge. You
Right.
pay per challenge, and once you're in the challenge, you're in the club, right? So it's $60, and what happens is you buy into it, and they'll send you your medal and stuff at the end. And that's what your $60 goes towards, the
Yeah.
app, using the app, and then ultimately the medal that you get at the end.
And the medals look really cool.
They do, but it's just going to go in a drawer, right?
Yeah,
It's not going to be something I fucking display prominently in the
That
middle
is
of my
true.
lounge room or
Yeah.
anything. It's just going to be like, oh, that's great, cool, yeah, in the drawer. But I was intrigued because it was Transylvania. I was like, oh, that's really fucking cool. And it starts in, who's the guy that we did? Wallacacia.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's where it ends, I think, actually. So Wallacacia was where your mate was from.
Vlad
Yes,
Vlad
the Impaler, yeah. And then it's like the Dracula stuff and all that. Anyway, so I signed up for it. And when I got it, it's not very informative about what happens, right? So I get this email, and then I was thinking, well, how's it going to track my walking and what do I do? And I couldn't really figure it out. So then I started Googling it to find out. And it says you actually legitimately need to punch in your kilometers every day. And I was like, well, that's not really rewarding.
Yeah, you
like,
thought
if it's
the
not
app
going to
would
monitor me.
track you. Yeah.
Anyway, but then I found something that said I can connect it to like certain apps, which is my Fitbit watch, right? So I was like, cool. But none of the instructions gave me that advice whatsoever. Nothing about how it was tracked. Not even that I had to punch it in myself.
Isn't it funny though that this person's had this idea? They haven't really had to do much, and they're probably making a shitload of money.
It's like 500,000 people are using it right now, which doesn't seem high considering it's a global thing. 500,000 isn't a lot really in the scheme of thing. Like, it hasn't really taken off, but certainly in terms of their marketing that they put on social media, it really gets you interested, and you look at it and you go, oh, that looks like fun.
Well, 500,000 times $60 is 30 million.
Oh, well, there you go. But it's not global. Do you know what I mean? Like, it hasn't gone off. 500,000 is not in the scheme of, it's not like the biggest thing ever. It's not Facebook.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when I finally found out that you can punch it in, but basically all it is a map that shows you where you are, and that's it. And so you have the option when you clock your Ks, it sends you to a new location. So I guess if you were sitting, like if you're on a treadmill, right?
Yeah.
And you had like a iPad set up or whatever, you could literally run with it or walk with it while you're on the treadmill, or while you're doing something that
watching your dot move. Do you mean?
Yes, you could do that, right? Or you could see that. So you can maps it, right? You can see the scenery. So you can put it on Google Maps.
Oh, okay.
Which is just legitimately Google Maps. And I'll tell you why I realized it's just Google Maps.
Because it's not old timey.
So because it gives you your starting point, and I was like, there has to be more than this. All I can see is just like a line, like an actual map and a line. That's it. And then I had a bit of a play with the app, and then I realized I could put the actual visibility of where I am in that location. So I put it on. I was like, so it starts in, I want to say Celia. It's not a very easy to use app either. Like, it's not a great app. I've got to say. It's not
user friendly.
No, it just doesn't have as much as what you would expect it to be. Sania, that's it.
Sania.
Okay, so I'll start again. So you start in Sania, right? And I was like, oh, this is a really cute town. And it actually made me think, like, I researched the town and stuff like that, because I was like pumped because I got my first starting thing, and I was like really into it, investigating it all and looking into it. And I was like, this is like a really cute fucking town. Like, why have I never thought about going to Romania before? Because it looks super cute and super cool. It's got like a bit of a Holland type vibe.
Yeah.
So you get like the little street view, and then I managed to figure out I didn't realize it was Google Maps till later. Anyway, so I had a look, and I was like, oh, this is really cute. I really like this. Now I'm really interested in this country. Anyway, so I've managed to connect it to my Fitbit, and now it's clocking my thing. So then it gives me an update, a progress update of where I've gotten to based on the Ks that I've done on my Fitbit during that day. And then it pushes me along. And it's literally going to take me, again, if I can, here we go.
Crunchy.
It's going to take me 140 days, as long as I do 37 Ks a week, to get to the end of it.
Holy fuck. Yeah, that's a bit of a...
So I'm 136. I've got 136 days to go.
Jesus. It's a commitment, isn't it?
25 Ks, just over 25 Ks. But I got to the most recent place. Let me see where I am. I got to the most recent place and it was like this cathedral thing, right? And again, I forget what it's fucking called, and I'm not going to Google it again. But I got to this cathedral, and that's when I realized it was on Google Maps, because when I looked at the city, there was a massive truck, a huge, huge like logistics truck in front of the cathedral. So I
Oh,
couldn't actually
no.
fucking see the cathedral.
You're like,
So
oh,
I
this would
was
be
like-
nice.
So whilst I was really stoked that the first two places I got to, I was like investigating it, looking at it, checking it out, and saying, "Oh, I really like the feel of this city." This one I had no clue, because it was bush on one side and the other side was a truck, and then there's just like this tiny little
steeple.
peak of this little steeple thing hanging over the
Oh
top.
God, that's hilarious.
So look, would I do another challenge? Probs not.
And it's one of those things like that's a long commitment. I guess if it's automatically tracking it on your Fitbit, then that's okay. You don't have to keep plugging it in every day, because people just give up after fucking.
And I
3
get
weeks.
alerts and stuff. So then I look at the alerts, and then it gives me this whole big summary of the place that I'm in. Like when you get to the bits and pieces and
Yeah.
stuff, like it gives you a summary of the
The
places you've
checkpoints
passed
and
through.
shit. Okay.
And that's a little bit interesting, but I'm really not going to look at it that often. Like
Yeah.
the novelty's already starting to wane,
Yeah.
and it's not even been a week yet.
Yeah.
So I'm already like, oh yeah, best $60 I spent.
That
Hope
is a
that
long
fucking
time.
medal's good.
Look, I have Googled it and I did see the medal. It does look cool, but yeah, it's just a big commitment.
Well, you do it at your own, so you don't have to do it in that time. You
Of
pick however
course.
long, and you can adjust it at any time.
But what's the total Ks for that?
The total Ks are 371
Yeah,
kilometers walking. That's a lot.
a lot.
Yeah. I've
Could
done
you connect it
25.
while you go for a drive somewhere and sort of knock off 100K?
That's cheating. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why would you
Just
do
to get your
that?
badge.
And maybe you get like a record at the end and say, you completed this, 700th in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
You're coming like 700th, or maybe I'll be coming 500,000.
Are you still there? It's like Netflix. Are you still there?
I've done 6% of the distance,
Oh, that's okay. That's
and
decent.
3% of the time that I've allocated for myself. So I think that means I'm a little bit ahead, I think.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
you thought you'd only be done at 3% at this point, but you've done 6. That's good.
Yeah, so it's definitely a novelty that I thought seemed really, really cool, but in practicality, yeah, it's meh.
Well, look, when you do get the badge eventually, you'll be like, yeah, I did it in the draw.
In 140 days. Oh, sorry, 136 days. Ish.
Okay, let's so today's date is the 7th of July. Let's do an update when you've actually finished it, and we'll see what the date is then.
Sure, I can't wait for that update. I'm so pumped for it.
Well, it's interesting you've got your challenge set out, because Vinny and I are off to Kenilworth Bakery tomorrow after we do our own little hike.
I wish I was
And
coming.
we will be doing our own challenge out there, and that will be eating a 1 kilogram jammed cream donut.
Not the walk, not the hike that you're going to do for 45 minutes.
It'll be the
beforehand.
jam and cream donut. So I'll try and get a picture of it and post it on our social.
Now, do you think it's going to be bigger than you expected or smaller than you expected in real life?
I think it's going to be like the size of a football.
That's a big fucking donut.
And look, full
Yum, yum, yum,
disclosure,
yum. Yum, yum, yum.
we won't be getting one each, and we did have to prepay and pre-order it.
And how much was it?
$25.
That's-
Yeah, it's a
that's not
novelty.
bad.
We
It's not a
probably will never-
$1 non-alcoholic bottle of wine from Golden Circle,
Exactly,
but
straight in the bin. We'll it'll be in the novelty. We'll probably never ever go there again. So we got to do it while we're there.
yeah, I know. I'm so jealous that we didn't go when we were up north. But yeah, and I wish I was coming, but I'm so excited to hear about your experience. Try something savory while you're there for me, please.
Oh, definitely,
too.
definitely. So we're gonna get the donut and bring that home with us. But they have apparently next door to the sweet section, you can get pies and sausage rolls and shit. So we'll be having lunch, probably picking up a couple of smaller donuts, because there's got a gay time jam, like Long John donut and fucking bee sting ones.
If there's a savory muffin, get a savory muffin and try that for me, okay? Because I love a good savory muffin.
All right, and you can get donut that they pour coffee into.
Oh,
It's like
what
a
would
cup.
that be like?
It's meant to be, it's like a cup. You should check out the picture on the website. It's like got the milk art on top of it as well. And
I'm not sure how
apparently
I feel about that.
you drink the
It would get
coffee
very
out and then
slushy.
well soggy, yeah. But don't like Americans do that too, don't they? The coffee of their Dunkin' Donuts and shit.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. I like to dip my Scotch fingers
Oh
into my
yeah.
cup of tea.
I don't mind the dunked Scotch finger myself. But anyway, let's get into this this episode's topics. And you, Sky, are covering the great, and I'm going to say late, Virginia Andrews.
Indeed, I am. I am the VC Andrews also, please.
This,
She goes by that as well.
she
But
do.
before we jump into my research, I want to talk about our experiences. So
Okay.
I've got a few written down that I'm going to talk through, but I want to talk about yours first. So you tell me what you know, what your life experience has been. Go.
Okay. So I guess my life experience, so always knew about Flowers in the Attic,
Mhm,
especially when
mhm.
I was a young teenager. That was, I don't know if a movie had just come out, or if my mother had gotten like the double VCR about it, the double video on it. And but the only book I read though was the prequel to it, Garden of Shadows, which is about the grandmother.
The
and it
grandmother
kind of
marrying that horrible man. Yeah, read that one.
explains how she sort of became who she was. But I read that when I was probably about 14. And I don't think I pursued reading any of the other books after that.
Out of all the books, it's probably up there with the worst. That one
Ah,
that you've read. Yeah, it's
right.
not a great one to grip you.
No, I do remember it taking a long time to read.
Because her story's not great, right? Because,
Yeah.
she's awful.
But when it comes to the movies of it, I've seen a couple of versions of Flowers in the Attic.
Also, sorry, I just want to interrupt you and insert there that Garden of Shadows is actually not written by VC Andrews. It's the ghostwriter who wrote that one.
Is it really?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but
okay.
that's actually not legitimately written by her. Yeah.
But is it a legitimately part of the series?
Yeah, 100%. So I will, just for the purposes of this, I've just made you big and now I've lost my notes. So just hold on a second. So I'll tell you, because there was some that she'd started writing. Okay, so she had two posthumous, is it posthumous volumes, which was credited to her, but were actually finished by the ghostwriter, which was Andrew Needham, and Garden of Shadows was one of them.
So she probably had the bones of it, and then he's had to
the full story outline, fragments, bits and pieces, partially finished before her death, but he fleshed it out.
Right. So yeah, I've seen it. I remember I guess the original. Is it what's her fucking name from Romancing the Stone and War of the Roses?
Oh, Kathleen Turner.
Was she in the original?
Flowers in the Attic?
Yeah.
No, she was not.
She kind of looks like she could be.
Yeah, she kind of looks like the grandmother. Is that what you mean?
No, she kind of looks like the mother, I thought.
She doesn't look anything like the mother at all.
Isn't the mother blonde?
Yeah, she's blonde, but that's where the similarities end.
Christy Swanson was in the original. Who's
she's Buffy. The original Buffy as well.
The OG Buffy.
Yeah,
is Victoria Tennant, was she the mother?
I think so. Yeah, she had the ringlety hair. Remember, she had the really curly hair. Yeah.
And then, so I remember watching that and being absolutely traumatized by the fact that the mother was poisoning her kids.
Yeah.
With the rat poison.
Because she wanted them all dead.
Yeah, to continue on with her life. I remember her turning up, and was it the mother who gave her the lashes across the back?
Yes.
In front of the father.
So this is probably a good segue for us to explain a little bit of the plot of Flowers in the Attic. So if you haven't seen it or read any of it, basically Flowers in the Attic is where reasonably wealthy family, beautiful blonde children, doted on his kids, the dad, and then he dies in a car accident unexpectedly, of course. So the mother comes from a very, very wealthy upbringing. So she has no choice because she can't pay the bills and has no skills whatsoever to get a job. And it's in I think the books are set way, way, way earlier. But ends up going back to her birthright home where she's the only heir to the fortune. It's a huge fortune, but she'd been written out of the will
Because she married that guy,
which
wasn't it?
was her uncle. So she fell in love with her uncle, and they
It's
were
set in the 50s, by the way. I
ostracized.
just Googled.
So they were ostracized from the family, and they run away together. They fell in love, had a family of 4. So she goes back, crawling on her hands and knees. Yes, they whip her. That's part of her punishment. The dad's dead
In the bed,
almost dying,
and it's
like
one
on
lashing
life.
for every year, isn't it, or something?
Yes.
And that's why they hate the kids, because the kids were the spawn of them, right?
Well, the mother said when she comes to the house, she said the father can never know that you spawn children out of incest, this abomination, or your children are abominations. So she puts them in the attic, and the attic. And the mother says, it's just for a short time. I just need to win back my father's affection, get back in the will, get some money.
That's right.
And then you can come down. But the father doesn't think she has any children. So he starts to, bring all suitors around because she's this beautiful girl, and she sucks up to him. She takes her lashings, and starts to earn back his love. And so he tries to get men to marry her and marry her off richly and build this new life for her. Meanwhile, the grandmother knows that the children are up there. The father doesn't. And over time, the mother realizes that the children are really just a hindrance to her having this wonderful life. So
she finds a suitor, doesn't she?
She does. She's about to be married at the end. And so she gradually starts to poison the children to kill them. And they're in the attic for years. They never see the sun. They're in a bedroom at first, and then the grandmother gives them keys to the attic, and this huge attic where there's all this old stuff where they, make all these, they make the best out of a horrible situation.
Yeah.
But then they slowly start to get sick.
There's 2 older kids and 2 younger kids.
Yes, there's 2 twins. The little kids
right.
are twins, and then the older brother and sister.
That's right.
And they're all incredibly close. But throughout the course of the story, the brother and the sister, the elder ones, start to also fall in love. And the grandmother catches them in some compromising positions. So continues on her theme of abominations, sinful children should be dead. Would kill you if I could, but I'm just going to gradually poison you with arsenic on donuts.
It was arsenic, was it? Yeah. I remember seeing
sprinkled
the
as sugar.
Where she sprinkles the sugar. Yeah. But did the grandmother know she was poisoning the kids, or was the grandmother a bit?
The grandmother, I believe, you're made to think that the grandmother, it was her doing, but the mother was the one doing it. So it was the grandmother's idea.
Or was she doing it at first, and then you see a scene where the mother ends up doing it?
I think in the film, that's how it goes. But the books are way more complex than what the film is. But ultimately, and then the mother is about to get married to a new fiance, and then the kids find a way to break out after the youngest one of the twins dies from arsenic poisoning.
Oh, that's right. One of them dies. Yeah.
The little boy. So it's a little boy and a little Corey and Carrie.
Yeah.
And then the little boy dies. And then once the little boys died, they're completely just desolate, beside themselves. And they're like, we've got nothing to fucking live for. We've been in this fucking attic. They're all white, pale faced because they've never seen sun.
Yeah.
They're super sickly. And then they decide to break out. And then they push the mother off the edge of a balcony at her wedding, remember?
That's right, yeah.
And she hangs herself on her veil. Yeah, that's the film. So that's one of the novels. That's her first novel.
How many in the series?
So in The Flowers in the Attic, there's 5.
Yeah.
And then I believe in Heaven there's 5 as well. And including those 5 is the prequel that you were talking about, The Flowers in the Attic prequel. So the first few books are written by V.C. Andrews, and then the ghostwriter comes in. But it's a pretty intense type of writing.
Yeah. And I remember that weekend we had Up the Coast.
Yes.
Where we were just hung over on a Sunday, and everyone else has gone to bed, and we'd started watching them. All of them, the remakes of it with Heather Graham.
The remakes, yes. And Heather Graham and the chick out of iZombie. That's in Ghost, the main character in Ghost. That show, the US Ghost. Right. The main character. So she plays the Kristy Swanson character in the first remake, but not the subsequent remakes.
Right. And then there's so what's the series again? So Garden of Shadows.
So Flowers in the Attic, Petals in the Wind. If There Be Thorns. And then
Seeds of
what's
Yesterday.
Seeds of Yesterday. If There Be Thorns. Hold on. Flowers in the Attic. Petals on the Wind. Yep. If There Be Thorns. Seeds of Yesterday. Garden of Shadows.
Right. And have you read them all?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it goes on. So in the books, the mother doesn't die at the end. And
Okay.
in the fourth book, it's all about the daughter the third book. Maybe it's the second book, actually. In one of them, it's all about the daughter so she ends up getting married, so she's about to get married in the movie and then she dies, but she gets married in the books. And then the daughter tries to win his affections and ends up being impregnated by the husband, so completely seduces him to get back at the mother. So the daughter,
which daughter? It's in the daughter that was in the attic.
Yes. So the daughter in the attic, she goes on to seduce the husband that the mother eventually marries and has a baby with him in the end.
Jesus.
Yeah, because to get back at the mother.
The mother. And they escape the attic though?
They escape at the end of the film, and in the books they escape, yes.
Okay. And what happens then with the daughter and the son don't end up having a relationship?
No, they do. So what happens basically is in the second book, she goes on and she becomes a dancer. Remember, she was a dancer in the film.
That's right.
So she becomes a professional dancer and ends up with this guy, and she has a baby to him. And then he has an accident and becomes a paraplegic or something, and then kills himself or something like that.
Who, the son?
No.
The brother?
No. She becomes a dancer, meets this guy, has a baby with him. Then he's also a dancer. He has an accident and can't dance anymore, then kills himself. Then she, in the meantime, she's having an affair with her brother the whole time. And then has the baby and then decides to seduce the mother's husband in the next book, and then has another baby. So she's got 2 kids. And then at that point, her and the brother decide to move to somewhere where no one knows them and become husband and wife, and never tell anyone that they're actually brother and sister, and bring up the family together. But then the mother comes back into it and tells the youngest son, who should have been her son because it was her husband, that they're living in incest, and who he thinks is his dad is actually his uncle.
Oh my God. What a fucking warped mind that came up with all this shit.
It's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so and yes, we did spend that weekend watching all the remakes after a weekend of full debauchery, and just kept going, okay, next.
Yeah.
Next
then
one,
we had to call it at about 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, and I think everyone who was with us was just like, guys, why do you keep watching this? And we were just like, we have to. But I'm going to talk about my very, very, very first experience with Virginia Andrews. So Flowers in the Attic was first, and then she started the Heaven series as well. So the very first book in the Heaven series, which is my absolute favorite, came later. And she wrote the first couple of books herself, and then wrote the outline for the final books. And then the ghostwriter came in and changed it all up. But I was about 8 years old, right? And I found the book. And do you remember back in the days when you're on school holidays at home and you'd literally do anything? You were so fucking bored.
Yeah.
Especially growing up like we did, like it wasn't like we all had computer games and shit like that. And at 8 years old, it was,
you were actually looking forward to getting back to school.
Yes. And you would literally do anything. You were so bored. And I remember finding this book, and I would read anything. I would devour anything. I was obsessed with books. So I found this book, and I knew on some level that it wasn't age appropriate for me. So I ended up picking it up and, snuck into my bedroom and started reading it. And I think I was about halfway through the book, and my first lot of hot flushes before my mum realized what I was reading. And I also think that she knew how dedicated I was to books at that time, and prying it out of my hands would have been completely impossible. So she let it go, but it was not age appropriate, man. It was like at 8 years old, I was reading about like rape and incest and everything, because the whole Heaven series is all about incest as well.
Jesus, that's so, yeah.
She had a real thing for it.
Yeah.
So I'll get into her now. And it's actually a really tragic story. So Cleo Virginia Andrews, she was born on June 6, 1923. and
Wow.
died in December of 1986. And she's better known as V.C. Andrews or Virginia Andrews. She was an American novelist. She combined Gothic horror and family saga revolving around family secrets and forbidden love,
Ooh la la.
frequently also involving themes of horrific events and sometimes including a rags to riches story. Plus, her best novel is the bestseller. Her best known novel is the bestseller Flowers in the Attic, a tale of 4 children smuggled into the attic of their wealthy, estranged, deeply religious grandmother and held prisoner there by their mother.
Yeah.
So her novels were successful enough that following Andrew's death, her estate hired a ghostwriter, Andrew Needham, to continue to write novels to be published under her name. Andrews was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, and as a teenager suffered a fall from a school stairwell, resulting in severe back injuries. The subsequent surgeries to correct these injuries resulted in her suffering from crippling arthritis that required her to use crutches and a wheelchair for much of her life.
Oh, Jesus.
So if you Google any images of her, you'll see photos of her in a wheelchair at book signings. Her elderly mother is always by her side. So she did release, so the ghostwriter Andrew Needham, he ended up doing a biography about her life, and it came out the year before last. So lots of people have wondered over the years, how did she come up with such warped sort of fiction? So she was never married. Her injury and then, all her condition that resulted from that injury meant that she was mostly housebound. And when she did become successful and started, venturing out and stuff like that, she was wheelchair ridden. Her mother was always beside her.
Which plays a thing in the first book.
Yeah. So there's a lot to say about how her upbringing resulted in some of these books. And not
Did
that
she have any siblings?
She did have siblings, yes. And so the money that she started making from books, so her father died when she was quite young. And then when she started making money, she was the one who looked after the family financially. But she never had children of her own. She never married. She rarely got out of the house. She was that incapacitated. So she wrote all these books. And then The Flowers in the Attic became an immediate success. Like, there was heaps of critics who was like, this shit is fucked up.
Yeah.
But people just loved it. And it's a great series, like, and even the movies, they're the kind of movies that are trashy, but you can't stop watching. You're just like, what is going on? But Heaven was really my favorite. So Heaven is based on a girl who lives in the Catskills. You know where the Catskills is in part of Virginia? It's like in the hills, the middle of nowhere type thing. And they're the most poorest family in the whole place. They go to school with no shoes on. They walk miles to get to school. There's 7 of them. And the book starts with her father absolutely hating the sight of her and just abusing her, beating the shit out of her all the time. And then her grandmother, this is Heaven, her grandmother takes her to this grave site because she's crying one day because of all the beatings that she gets from her dad, and basically says, you can't blame him. It's because his wife died, and so she has a mother at the house with all these other kids, but it's basically because her mother died in childbirth, and he went on.
He blames her.
He blames her and went on to have other children with this other woman who just absolutely hates her as well and also abuses her. God. And they've got all these kids. Anyway, so that's how it starts. And then she realizes, I'm not actually part of this family. Like, I've got another family out there. And her grandmother gives her this case of all this really, really expensive clothing and, all this stuff that she's never seen before in her life because she's been poor as hell. And so she starts to have a little bit of hope in the world. Like, there's someone out there, maybe there's a whole nother life. Even though her mother's dead, she knows she comes from wealth. Maybe she's got grandparents out there, yada, yada, yada. So the stepmother, who has all the other kids, the other 7 kids, she ends up having enough of getting beaten by the husband, and she fucks off and leaves them with the kids. And they're that poor that the dad just drinks all the money. Oh, Heaven is the character. She's like looking after all these children, including babies. And in the end, the father sells them all. Oh my God. So he can't look after them. So one day they come home and he's like, basically, fucking get your best clothes on, which is fucking rags anyway. Scrub up, clean yourself up. And then cars just start pulling up. and they're people who don't have children and start adopting all the children and taking them off. And some of them seem nice and some of them seem
Not so
absolutely
nice.
rotten. And the dad doesn't give any shits. He's like, take the money, put him in the car. So she watches, she's the last one to go. She watches all the children leave, including her brother, who's the same age,
Right.
which isn't really her brother. And she's just like, they've taken everything. And then she ends up going with this family who seems really nice, but they're just brutal to her. And then the rest of the books are about her journey to try to find her mother's family, who also are really fucked up and brutal.
Oh, God.
And it's incest after incest after incest.
Oh, I wonder if she had fantasies about some of her siblings while she was trapped in the wheelchair in the house. And because that's the only.
I don't know.
Guys she saw and shit.
Or maybe she just hooked onto one really crazy idea and it had that wow factor.
And she just kept with it.
That people, just loved it and just kept into it. So she just made major success. So she published her first novel, which was Flowers in the Attic, and she published it in 1979. She was 56. And she was dead by 65.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so it was very late in her life. But she did a lot of other stuff, like she was freelancing and things like that. She was always very good with words, and that's how she was able to keep the family going after her father died, because he died in the late 50s. But then she made real success, and all that money ended up going to the mother who kept her in, rarely took her out, and because she couldn't venture out on herself. Her mother was deeply religious.
Life can be cruel, can't it?
Refused to read any of her books because she thought they were, sinful and yada yada.
But was happy to take the dollar,
the money. And if you search her, you'll see that elderly mother standing in front of the box and fucking, And the mother was like super old, man. Like the mother outlived her by like probably 20, 30 years.
Jesus.
And then that estate alone is worth a shit ton. So they got this ghostwriter in, and then he finished those books and then started his own series. So one of those series was called Dawn, and I started watching it. I remember my friend in school, because I got her onto the Heaven books and she was absolutely obsessed. And then when Dawn came out, because Dawn probably came out when we were in high school, I think, early high school. And she was obsessed, but I just thought it was trashy. So that was the first series that he started to write on his own. Yeah. And after that, I completely lost interest and I couldn't get through the Dawn series. I thought it was absolute trash.
Well, the Heaven books, big books. So no, like Flower in the Attic and all that.
Big books. The Heaven books were bigger. They were bigger than the Flowers in the Attic ones. But in the end, he wrote 26 separate series in her name posthumously. Out of those books, probably over 100 books. And it's still mainstream stuff. Like it's absolute trash garbage. Like if you picked it up, you'd have to really be desperate to read it. It's that bad.
Yeah.
But made his money off her name for so long with Dawn series and subsequent other series. Like they just kept going and going.
They still allowed him to use her pen name.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think they're trash, but other people, that's totally their kind of thing. And they all mainly featured on orphans, rags to riches stories.
Yeah. Trauma.
Lots of trauma.
The game the family can all play together.
Yeah. But I have 1,000 notes, but I've basically just summed it up in that explanation. But she's amazing. And I tell you what, if you pick up Heaven, you would love it. You would literally start reading it and just be like, what is this fucking insane shit I'm reading?
I'm intrigued to read it. It just, what scares me though is the fucking size of it. Like those books, they can be, it's like you're doing your fucking walk. You're like, oh yeah, this sounds on. And then you're halfway through it and it's 6 months later and you're like, fuck me, I've still got to keep going.
I guarantee if you brought it though, you'd read the first couple of pages and be like, I'm not putting this down ever. And you'd be walking around the house reading it while you're having dinner and doing a poo and
the phone would get put down.
Yeah, you would. Just like if you're going to try any, totally try Heaven. And I'd love to hear what you think about it, because I've thought about reading it again from the beginning. And in my life, I've probably read that book and that series probably 4 or 5 times.
Oh, wow.
That's especially when I was younger, like in my teens and my 20s. When I was really bored and couldn't find anything new to read, I just started again. That's how much I loved it.
Oh, wow. Love that.
Yeah. And Flowers in the Attic was good, and there's also actually, I'm just going to touch on this before I finish up. There's other standalone ones, and I'm going to read you the summary. So the Sweet Audrina series, I remember reading the Sweet Audrina again around about the time that I first started picking up Heaven. And it has this girl on the front and she's like lost in a forest and stuff like that. It's a really intriguing cover. And it was a standalone book, and then the ghostwriter went on to make further adaptations of it. But initially, as a standalone novel, the story takes place in the mid-Atlantic United States, where they were all really based, during the 60s and 70s. The story features diverse subjects such as brittle bone disease,
Brittle brain syndrome,
rape, post-traumatic stress disorder, and diabetes.
diabetes.
Diabetes in the haunting setting of a Victorian era mansion.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it was messed up because all that post-traumatic stress disorder made you feel like you're in some sort of weird dream and you never really knew what was going on. I remember finishing going, what the fuck did I just read, man? That's fucking haunting.
You get to the end and you're like, I'm not satisfied with what just happened.
Yeah. And look, to be fair, I only ever read that once and I was probably that 10. So I don't know if I would enjoy it or be as baffled by it now as an adult. But I remember being like, I've gone down a dark hole.
Mom, I need help to get out. Where's the light? I need the light. I
really should have stopped at Heaven. I'm too young for this shit.
Oh, interesting. You like your incest, don't you?
Not really.
It's featured a couple of times.
It tends to be a riveting read. I'll give you that much. It's like, what? No, don't do that.
He did what?
Slap it away. Don't fall in love with your brother. Stop it.
Bah, put it down.
Over to you, stupid bitch.
All right. So I'm doing Armistead Maupin's Tales of the Cities. So first up, have you read any of the series?
Yes, I've read the very first one. And I remember you coming into my car one day and seeing it on the floor in the back seat and saying, is that my book? Did you borrow that off me? Because it was completely fucked up. And I said, no, it's mine.
You had the three of them. I think you had that one.
Oh, maybe I read
the city and
maybe
Further
I
Tales.
did read the others, but the one that you saw on the back seat, you thought it was your copy because
yeah,
it was
and I'm like,
the
are you
front cover
sure?
was ripped, and I was like, I fucking brought it, and then
So
you
how
ended
did
up
you get
messaging
it?
me like a couple of weeks later, going, actually, I found it. I lent it to blah blah or something. But you were totally outraged at me. You're like, I swear to God, that's my copy, and you fucked it. And I was like, it's not. It's my copy that I fucked.
I think what was so bizarre for me when I saw it was I'd only just started getting into it, and then all of a sudden I've seen it in your car, and I'm like, why the fuck do you have this? How did you get onto this? Why are you reading this book? Is that mine? That's mine, isn't it?
I read everything. You know that.
So what did you think?
Look, I didn't hate it, but it wasn't amazing for me. Like, I think it was there was a couple of characters that I enjoyed, and I think that's the whole thing. The characters are the thing that keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
It's a character builder, and you've got to buy into that. And then the story that they spin is, neither here nor there. It's more about the people.
Yeah.
But I remember the landlordy
Anna Madrigal.
Yeah, the landlord, the lady landlord. She smoked heaps of weed, didn't she?
Yeah. She was cool as fuck. That. I love her. Okay, so yeah, I am obsessed with them. I loved them. Kim.
It's got a cult following to it as well.
So Kim Madison got me into it. When we worked together years ago, she told me about it. It's got the whole LGBT theme with it.
Oh, absolutely.
San
and isn't Sex and the City, like, her books are loosely based, like she was inspired by them?
I didn't know that, really.
I think, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling, or they inspired some other popular series. I'm pretty sure it's Sex and the City, but I could be wrong.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I was obsessed with it, and I read the first one. I was like, yes. And you know how they've got the little twist at the end that sort of comes out of nowhere. And then I got into the second one and the same thing, and the third, and then all of them. So Tales of the City comprises a collection of 9 novels penned by American author Armistead Maupin Plus, spanning from 1978 to 2014. And I'm going to list them.
Is that a pen name or is that his real name?
That's his name. You know, you don't seem convinced. Let me see.
Her pen name. The only time there's a pen name is when it's a woman pretending to be a man to get published.
Or
unless you're Anne Rice and you're writing deep-rooted pornography in another
and that's
name.
why you have to change your name all the time. So, yeah, Armistead Jones Morpin,
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
born in 1944, May 13th, day before you, please.
I take back my raised eyebrows and look of doubt.
Are you sure? So I'm going to list the books. Ready? It's Tales of the City, which was in 1978, More Tales of the City, 1980. Then he branches out and goes for Further Tales of the City in 1982. Then he changes the names of them and it goes Baby Cakes, which was 84, Significant Others in 87, Shore of You in 89. Michael Tolliver Lives then came out in 2007, nearly 20 years later.
He was one of the original main characters, wasn't he?
Yes, he's Mouse, the gay guy. Then it's Marianne in Autumn in 2010.
Another main character.
Yep. And then The Days of Anna Madrigal in 2014. I have them all and I love them all, please. But much to my heart's content, however, during my research, I saw that there's another book in the series expected to be released next year called Mona of the Manor, which I'm fucking thrilled about. I loved Mona's character. She was also in the first one and she was kind of the hippie chick.
Yeah.
Based on the title, though, I'm guessing this novel will be a short story or will be a story from back in the day. So whereas every other novel is based on the time it was released,
yeah,
this one I don't think is, but I'll cover that throughout the story about these stories, please. Anyway, Tales of the Cities book series to me is a comfort read. It's like when you have your favorite TV show that feels right and you can watch it over and over again. Hashtag Will and Grace, probably Parks and Rec for you. These books are the same for me. So basically, the book paints a vivid portrait of a circle of friends in San Francisco, with many of them belonging to the LGBTQI plus community. Fun fact, initially the stories from Tales were serialized prior to them becoming a novel, with the first 5 titles appearing as columns over various editions of San Francisco newspapers, and then were then compiled into a novel.
So and how you love San Fran.
I do love San Francisco. So people were reading it, the short stories in the newspaper, and would have been getting hooked that way. So it would have been like a fucking TV show, really, but you were reading it.
That might have been where I got the Sex and the City piece from, like, because it's based on columns.
Yeah. So the remaining were just written straight as novels. So the first 3 books are based pretty much just on the core group of friends who end up staying at 28 Barbary Lane, the residence that serves as a central setting and a vibrant hub for the characters and their intertwining stories. The residence itself is full of quirky decor, vintage furnishings, and a cozy ambience that reflects the bohemian spirit of San Francisco, especially in the 70s. So we'll go into the characters. There's the main characters, which is Marianne Singleton, who's Marianne in Autumn, a naive girl from Ohio who goes to San Fran for a holiday, and to visit a friend there, but ultimately decides to move there. And fuck, man, one
of them ends up pregnant, don't they?
Yeah. So that's Connie Bradshaw, who is the friend that Marianne went to school with, that then branched out to San Fran, and she goes over. So yeah, she moves there from Ohio, and where's my thing is? Fuck, man, I tell you, the amount of fucked up episodes of true crime shows that we've seen from Ohio, I'm not surprised she moved there. So good choice, Marianne Singleton, please. There's the eccentric marijuana-loving landlady of 28 Barbary Lane, Anna Madrigal. And when people move in, she gives them like a welcome note with a joint attached.
Yeah.
Who we later find out is transgender, and her name is actually an anagram for a man and a girl.
Oh, no way.
Yes. And there's something about that too, which I'll get to later. And I loved Anna Madrigal. I think everyone loves Anna Madrigal. She's just the coolest bitch. She has the best advice. She's like the Dumbledore from Harry Potter of the Tale of the City series.
What a great idea in the 70s to come up with that. Like, that's such a great character to write.
Totally. And her story as well is, as you read it throughout the series, is just amazing. But Anna becomes a central figure of the series, offering wisdom, love, and acceptance to the residents, and her own story arcs are a fun journey throughout the books too. My all-time fave is Mona Ramsey, the bisexual hippie chick who loves herbal teas, quaaludes, and smoking weed. She's the best. Do you remember her in the books? She's already a resident of there. She's got like the fiery red curly hair. She has also some great stories throughout the series, and really fall in love with her. One of her best story arcs, though, is when she goes on an adventure to discover her roots. She doesn't know her history, her family history. And while she's high on angel dust, she meets a woman on a bus called Mother Mucker, who's a madam of a brothel in Winnemucca, who I just realized now that's why they call her Mother Mucker, because Winnemucca.
Oh,
Jeez. The Blue Moon brothel. And the Mother Mucker is also a great fucking character. She takes Mona to the brothel to help with the phones, and then the story gets more intricate and fun from there. So there's a lot. I don't want to spoil anything.
I'm totally going to buy it and reread it because I don't have it anymore.
It's
obviously,
so good.
Because it was ruined when you saw it, the first one.
So that story, I think, happens in the second book. But it's cool, like, and then you learn the backstory of so much stuff, but I just don't want to give anything away. Brian Hawkins, the token hetero, who plays who sounds pretty hot in the book, and Michael Tolliver, who's known as Mouse, the sweet, cute, and totes lovable gay of the complex. Of course, there are a number of other characters, such as Connie Bradshaw and Dee Dee Hallison, I think it is, who make frequent appearances, but I can't list them all, right? Because installments were published so soon after Maupin wrote them, he was able to incorporate many current events into the plots of the series, so as they happen, because he was still releasing it, as well as gauge reader response and modify the story accordingly. So, for example, Maupin once received a letter from a reader of the original series who pointed out that Anna Madrigal's name was an anagram for a man and a girl, which is how Maupin appropriated the idea into the novels. He didn't actually have that.
No.
So isn't that cool? It's something.
Yeah,
and it's something that comes out later in the first book. The AIDS epidemic.
So he just did that randomly, and then someone realized that that's what it was.
It says a man and a girl. Yeah.
Was he taking a lot of LSD back in the day?
Look, judging from the content of the book, I'm sure there was a Quaalude slipped here and there.
Where do we get Quaaludes from?
I know you can't get them anymore. They were helping out housewives to go to sleep, wasn't it? But if you stay awake, that's when the high really hits. So the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s that affected everywhere, of course, but really hit San Francisco's gay community in particular, with many of Maupin's friends dying, is reflected in the book series. It also throws in some wild twists to incorporate real life people such as Jim Jones. You know who he is, right? The leader of the People's Temple, which was a huge cult from 1955 to when he dies in 78.
Oh, I know the name, yeah, but I was trying to place it.
Yeah, so Jim and his inner circle orchestrated a mass murder suicide of the cult members from his remote jungle commune, Jonestown, in Guyana.
Was that the drinking the...
Don't drink the Kool-Aid,
Yeah,
please.
the Kool-Aid, yeah.
So he ends up in one of the books as actually surviving the Jonestown massacre and is a hobo in San Francisco Park. So there's like little twists like that. There's also a thinly veiled mention of Elizabeth Taylor in the storylines after one of the characters ends up at a health resort, and it refers to a prominent closeted gay celebrity in the books, but as it refers to him in the book is just blank line, so 2 blank underlines. Doesn't say the names throughout the third novel, which is a reference to Rock Hudson, who was a friend of Maupin. Yeah. Each book follows a little adventure where there is some of out of the blue twist at the end, and pretty much all of them really. They're an easy read, and the twists literally do just sort of come out of nowhere. Like you're reading a story, there's some weird shit going on, and then next minute you're just like, holy fuck. They're an easy read, all standard size novels. You could literally finish one in a couple of days if you wanted. And again, just like after our Buffy/Angel episode, and after writing this, it's making me want to read them all again, especially to get in preparation.
I'm going to give it another go.
Especially to get in prep for Mona of the Manor. They're so much fun. Also, it's fun that there is such an age gap between Shore of You and Michael Tolliver Lives, because the issues and the technologies of the world change with it, of course. So like Facebook's used. So you actually feel like you're growing with the characters.
Yeah.
Especially from our generation where we know what it was like before all this shit. What are we called? Zennials. In 1993, the first book was made into a 6-episode miniseries and had some pretty big names. They may not have been big at the time, but still they are now. So you
Laura Dern was in it, wasn't it? Wasn't she?
No, it's
Laura Linney. No,
yeah, Laura Linney.
Yeah.
Olympia Dukakis.
She's Mary Ann, isn't she? Laura Linney.
Laura Linney plays Mary Ann Singleton. She's from Ozark, Love Actually. Olympia Dukakis played Anna Madrigal, and she's from Moonstruck, Still Magnolias, Look Who's
Oh, I know
Talking.
who Olympia Dukakis is. I love her. She's from
Yeah.
Sweet Steel Magnolias.
Still Magnolias, Mr. Holland's Opus Plus.
Mary,
Mary,
put that on my list.
Mr. Holland's Opus or
Yeah.
Still Magnolias.
Both. I've thought about forcing Tyler to watch Steel Magnolias a bunch of times, but I thought, oh, it's going to have to be like in a real situation where it's like, fine.
Or a hangover moment.
Yeah,
or something.
put whatever you want. And I'm going to have to hear him whinging all the time and then ultimately loving it.
Chloe Webb plays Mona Ramsey in the first season. She was perfectly cast too. She was amazing as a character. She's in Twins. Hair. Yeah, she's in Twins. She plays Danny DeVito's girlfriend, I think. She was in Practical Magic.
Who is she in Practical Magic?
I don't know.
Oh, she's the chick that works in the shop that she has. I know who she is. The frizzy hair. She's in heaps of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
I love her. She's always amazing in every movie she's in. She's always a side character, but she's always excellent.
Yes, and she's brilliant as Mona Ramsey in the first season, the first series of Tales of the City. She's also in Sid and Nancy, and she was in Shameless. She played Monica Gallagher in Shameless.
Yep.
Thomas Gibson of Dharma and Greg, that guy. Do you know Dharma and Greg?
Oh, yeah, and then he's in fucking Criminal Minds.
Yes, yeah. He plays the douchebag.
The straight guy.
Day.
Oh, okay.
Parker Posey's in it.
I love Parker Posey.
She plays Connie Bradshaw. So the list goes on, please. Anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed it. They then went on to make more Tales and further Tales of the City into a mini-series as well, which are 6 and 4 episodes each, respectively, please. I actually haven't seen those, I'm ashamed to admit, though I do have them all downloaded from back in the day. I'd started More Tales of the City, but it was hard for me to get into because they changed 2 of the best actors. So Mona Ramsey isn't played by Chloe Webb. It's played by some other chick who has the red hair, but she just doesn't capture it as well as Chloe
That's
Webb
the worst thing, isn't it? When you love a show and then they change it up too much and you're like, I just can't. I can't keep going.
I could watch it now. I'm over that, but it was just annoying for me. And also Mouse, the guy who played Mouse, was perfectly cast. It was this cute gay guy. He was just everything the Mouse should be. And they changed him up too. And he's still a cute gay guy, but it's just not, you lose that authenticity. So Chloe Webb, who played Mona, wanted to come back, but she wanted to be paid more than the other actors. And the producers declined her request as the show was operating under a favored nations agreement, which means that lead cast members are required to be paid equally, which I think is fair. Yeah. And the guy who played Mouse, Marcus D'Amico, expressed ambivalence about returning to the role. And the director wanted someone who would embrace the role enthusiastically. Fair. So didn't get it. Also, the guy who played Brian, Paul Gross, had commitments filming the TV series Due South at the time. So he moved from that into Due South. Do you remember that Canadian comedy? We mentioned it in a previous.
Yep. Yeah. So where can you stream the first season?
So I had a look on Just Watch, and you used to, because they've released another version or a more current version of Tales of the City on Netflix, and it's set in today's time. And I think it's meant to be loosely based around the days of Anna Madrigal, because it's got a lot of the storyline relates to that, but I don't think it's an exact replica of the book like the other ones are.
But do you know what? I'd have to read the book. I'm going to kill myself if I try to watch the series without reading the book again and revisiting it, because when I was watching The Clearing, that Aussie one that I was talking about, did we talk about it in the last episode or this episode?
I think it was the last one.
The new Aussie one that's on Disney, which is insane. It's totally fucks with your head. I realized it was a book. Like after the first episode, I was like, this would have been a fucking insane book because the show is so insane. Like reading it would be so much more intense than the show, and the show's intense, man.
Just start it, yeah. Hang on, let me go back. So Tales of the City. So you can't stream it anymore in Australia. They must have taken it off Netflix.
The original one or the newer one?
Yeah, the original one. But I've got them all downloaded, so I'll be able to give them to you on a USB. So yeah, he went on to Due South, but he comes back to reprise his role when Netflix revised the series under Tales of the City in 2019, as well as Laura Linney and Olympia Dukakis. They come back to it.
Oh.
to their role too. And so does the chick who plays Dee Dee Allison, I think her name is. Anyway, so as I mentioned, Netflix revised the series in 2019. They only did one series though, and it sort of references storylines in the books, especially the Days of Anna Madrigal, but I'm pretty sure it's not actually based on any book itself. There's new characters as well as our beloved favorites. And again, I know I started it, but I can't remember if I actually finished it. I was going to give you a 2-sentence synopsis of each of the books, but after many attempts, I think it'll just be boring, as you can't capture all the bits and pieces that make them so great without giving anything away. So instead, I'll just list some quick fun facts. A musical, Tales of the City, premiered at the American Conservatory Theatre in 2011, written by Tony winner Jeff Whitty and scored by Scissor Sister singers Jake Shears and John J.J. Gardner.
Stop.
Yeah. Actors Laura Linney, Olympia Dukakis, Barbara Garrick, who plays Dee Dee Hallison Day, please, are the only actors to participate in each iterations of the show. So they appear in all 4 versions of the show as their character. Barbary Lane, where the house is, the fictional street where Anna Madrigal and her tenants live, is based on the real Macondry Lane on Russian Hill in San Fran. The signature wooden steps have made several appearances in the various television adaptations.
Did you go there when you went to San Francisco?
No, I remember trying to see if I could visit Barbary Lane or something like that, or where it was meant to be based on when we went, but I couldn't find anything. So I'm devoted to just learn this now, because I totally would have gone there and just sat on the steps or something, you know.
Photos,
Yeah.
selfies.
Instagram. Armistead Maupin based the character of Michael Mouse Tolliver on his own experiences as a gay man in San Fran. In 2002, Maupin met his husband, photographer and website producer Christopher Turner, on 18th Street in the Castro after seeing him on Turner's site, hotoldermail.com. Maupin later used this story as a meet cute for Michael and his husband, Ben, in the new series. So before I finish, I just want to pay a little homage to Armistead Maupin, the author. Obviously, he's very famous for Tales of the City, but he also wrote Maybe the Moon, which I haven't read, but must get it. And also The Night Listener, which I know we've spoken about, but I don't know if we've spoken about it in the podcast.
Is The Night Listener the thriller?
Yes. So the one with Robin Williams.
Yes, I was just about to say Robin Williams is in it.
Yes. So he wrote that as well. And I've got the book and I've read the book and it's great. And they made it into a movie with Tom and Robin Williams, Toni Collette's in it, who we both know very well, and Bobby Cannonvale.
I love Bobby Cannonvale.
Yes.
He's married to Rose Byrne.
Yes, he plays Will's cop lover in Will and Grace and is also in Nine Perfect Strangers and a ton of other stuff.
Love him.
But yes, great book and great movie based on a popular gay New York City radio show host dealing with separation from his partner. Robin's character, that radio show host, gets a memoir from a little boy who has suffered years of abuse and now has AIDS, who listens to his show. He calls the kid to chat and develops a telephone friendship with the kid and his adopted mother, the social worker who was handling his case. But in true Maupin style, we get twists galore.
I can't watch any Robin Williams anymore. It makes me too sad. I was devastated by his death. Devastated. Like,
it's
I cried.
Very sad. We got to read the book.
Fucking cried, and I'm still not over it.
Read the book. It's very good. I think the book's better than the movie. And again, It's only a thinnish book. But he makes it to me
when I see you next. Give it to me.
All right, and then give it back. I don't want to see it torn up on the floor if you can. But he just has a way of making you fall in love with the characters in all his books, even the ones who wouldn't be a cup of tea in normal life. You end up fond of them. So if you are looking for a new book series to read, I highly recommend getting onto Tales of the City and start your journey there.
Or Heaven.
Heaven. You won't be able to put it down and will be gagging to get to the next book in the series, just to find out more about what's happening to the people you fell in love with. Plus, it's fun going back to the 70s and the 80s. And that's that.
Oh, I'm so jonesing to read them all. I'm going to have to get on Amazon after this. I'll just get the first one.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our literary spectacular for you this week.
Tune in next week as we go back in time. And each pick a historical inspirational activist that changed the world in some way or another. Remember to give us all your feedback. We love it, like totes. And remember, Unlike me, if you are whining, you're winning. Unless
Or
it's a dollar
beering.
bottle. Or bearing. If you're bearing, you're
You're
bearing.
bearing. Good
Good night, you
night.
stupid bitches. Yeah, that stupid bitch. He's a stupid bitch. What a stupid bitch. That's stupid.